Hey guys, okay, so we are jumping into quadratic functions with using the roots system. So the solutions to a quadratic are the points or points, because remember it doesn't have to cross the x-axis at all. It can cross it once or twice, at which the parabola crosses the x-axis. So the solutions are also known as the x-intercepts, right? Because it's crossing the x-axis. The zeros, because you're plugging it in or saying equal to zero or zeros, or the roots, which is kind of where this square root comes into place. So you're going to use this method when there's no b value. And if you think back to the quadratic function, that would be the bx term. So no bx term. It's going to look something like this. So it'd be y equals ax squared plus c. That's what it'll look. It won't have bx term in the middle. So to solve, set y equal to 0 and solve for x. Okay, remember when you take the square root of a number, the answer is always plus or minus, all right? It's always going to be plus or minus. So if we're taking the square root of 49, for example, that equals 7 and -7. You can always write it as plus or minus 7, which is just a nice straightforward way to write it rather than writing 7 and -7, just plus or minus 7, right? Because remember that when you square -7, you get a positive 49. When you square positive 7, positive 9. That's why it can be either of those answers. So the first thing that we want to do when we're solving using square roots is we look and we see, oh, there's no bx method, or there's no bx, so we can use the square root method. Number one, get an x squared term by itself. On one side of the equation, by itself on one side of the equation. So the x squared term needs to be by itself. And I'm going to start doing that in this first one. So here's my x squared. I want to get it by itself. So I see that there's a -48, which means I'm going to add 48 and add 48 to get it by itself. And I'm going to end up with 3x squared equals 48. And then I'm going to take, and then of course, divide by 3. And I'll end with x squared equals 16, which brings me to my next step. So I've gotten x squared by itself, right? That was my first thing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the square root of both sides of the equation to solve for x. So take square root of both sides of the equation to solve for x. So I take the square root and I take the square root, and I x equals plus or minus 4. And then the last thing that you're going to want to do, I don't know, I keep going in red and then blue, is write your solutions as an ordered pair or pairs. example, x comma 0. At the x-intercept, the y value always equals 0. This y value will always be 0. Okay, so to write that as an ordered pair, my positive 4, so 4 comma 0, and my negative 4, negative 4 comma 0. Remember, the y in your solutions, your roots, your x-intercept, the y is always 0. So let's go ahead and try that. Our goal, I'm just going to go ahead and highlight throughout here. Let us know that's the term I want to get alone, this x squared, every time. Okay, so to start for this one, I'm going to add 16 and add 16. And I will have x squared equals 16. I'm going to do our next step where I take the square root, take the square root, and x equals plus or minus 4. Not too bad, right? So I will go ahead and write that as an ordered pair. A positive 4 comma 0 and a negative 4 comma 0. And those are my answers. Okay, if you want to go ahead and pause me and try number 2 by yourself, you're more than welcome. If not, I'm going to be doing all of these. So let's go ahead and add 100 and add 100. And I'll end up with x squared equals 100. And we'll take the square root and take the square root. And we'll get x equals plus or minus 10. And I'll write that as an ordered pair. Sorry, I keep grabbing the red pen. Negative 10 and 0. And that's my answer. Okay, so we'll move along still. And I'm going to have negative 25 minus 25 and minus 25. End up with x squared equals negative 25. Uh-oh. Right here, this you cannot take the square root of a negative number. There's no numbers that when you multiply them by themselves are going to be negative. It doesn't exist in this type of situation. Once you get to pre-calc, imaginary numbers, or maybe algebra 2, I don't know. So you cannot take the square root of a negative number. All right, so your answer here would be no solution. No solution means the parabola does not cross x-axis. No solution means that the parabola does not cross the x-axis. Okay, so let's go ahead and try number 4. Again, pause me if you want to give it a shot on your own. So 7 minus 7, x squared equals negative 3. Oh, can't take the square root of a negative number, so no solution. Okay, moving down, we'll do the same thing. We'll add 126 and add 126. And this time we have a coefficient in front of our x squared, so we're going to have one more step. We're going to do x squared equals 126. I'll do 2 divided by 2. Oops, it's red when I'm doing these steps. And I'll end up with x squared equals equals 63. Okay, so now I'm going to take the square root of that, and if I remember correctly, 9 and 10 are multiples of 63, so I would take the square root of 9, which would give me 3, and 7 would have to stay inside of the radical, right? So it would be 3 rad 7, comma 0, and it's plus and minus, and negative 3 rad 7, 0. Oops, parentheses around them. So guys, I'm not going to give you too crazy of ones to simplify, but you should be able to simplify rad 63 and the ones that we're going to give you. Okay, so let's move on to, we're going to add 6 and add 6, and we'll end up with negative 8x squared equals negative 24. And we're not taking the square root yet. Don't panic. We're going to divide by negative 8 and divide by negative 8, and we will get x squared equals 3. Well, there's no way that 3 can be simplified with a square root, right? That's about as simplified as it can go. So our answer is going to be x equals plus or minus rad 3. If you try it as a coordinate pair, you can. So rad 3, comma 0, or negative rad 3, comma 0. I'm fine with either. Okay, so let's try number 7. I'm going to subtract 10 and subtract 10 and get 25x squared equals 36. Ooh, that's a doozy. So now we'll divide by 25. Oops, and I'll square it on that. Oh, goodness. This back here, a bit of a hot mess. And divide by 25. All I'll end up with is x squared equals 36 over 25. And I will have to take the square root of that, right? So these are actually both perfect squares. Because they're both perfect squares, I can take the square root of each of them. So I would have x equals plus or minus 6 over 5 because I took the square root of each of them. Okay, so here we go again. Nothing to add. So I'm start by dividing 36 and dividing 36, and I'll end up with x squared equals 100 over 36. Well, to get x by itself, I'm going to take the square root and the square root, and I will end up with x equals 10 over 6. Plus or minus, right? But if you think about it, oh, I can write the plus or minus. These can be reduced. They're both divisible by 2. So this would be 5 and this would be 3. X technically is equal to plus or 5 over 3. All right, so another step to remember, right? Gotta simplify. Okay, guys, come off hours, Tuesdays, 12:30 to 1 if you have any questions. And next up, we'll be using the quadratic formula. All right, bye, guys.